Hello, this is Jam Master Daniel 96, and in today's video, I'll be reading an old article from 2013, which is about Crucible paving way for Star Wars Episode 7, and bear with me, I know this article is outdated, and as we know, the sequel trilogy has come to a close, and, pretty much they didn't go this route, but reading this article is kind of something, this is more like, think of it more like a look back kind of thing. I'll read you the article and then kind of give you my thoughts and all that. And let's begin. And here we go. I have an out of the ordinary perspective on Troy Dennin's latest Star Wars novel, Crucible. I read it with an eye toward Episode 7 and how it sets the stage for that movie in several areas. Most fans will read the novel with the notion that it's part of a different timeline than the films, but until I hear otherwise from Lucasfilm or Disney, I'm going to assume Episode 7 takes place soon after Crucible, which is set 41 years after Return of the Jedi. Only 32 years have passed between Episodes 6 and 7 in real time, but I'd argue that people age slower in the GFA unless they're on Tatooine. Beware of spoilers for those who haven't read the book yet, but I have read the book, and I definitely reviewed this book last year in the spring. And let's continue on. Denning writes Crucible as one last blast for Luke, Leia, Han, and Lando, even including an epilogue where they decide they're going to retire and explore the galaxy, except Lando, who plans to continue with entrepreneurial ventures. Ben half-heartedly argues with Luke, but then concedes that yes, the Jedi Order will be able to get by without him. This nicely sets up the original trilogy's heroes for their mentor roles in the sequel trilogy. The main villains of Crucible, a couple of brain attached to bodies of the Cull, my species, are dispatched by the end, but in secondary roles we see Vestera, Ben's ex-girlfriend, who opted to embrace her Sith ways at the end of Fate of the Jedi, and Murtagev, Boba Fett's granddaughter, both escaped at the end, leaving them free to become antagonists in Episode 7. Both are serious villains with sympathetic threads. Murtagev wants to find an antidote for the poisonous atmosphere on Mandalore, while Vestera is an outcast from both the Jedi Order and the lost tribe of the Sith, whose home planet Kesh remains lost. Another lost world that is teased in Crucible and could make a good Episode 7 plot is Mortis from the trio of episodes in Clone Wars Season 3. In Crucible, Han, Luke, and Leia end up on an artifact within a maze of nebula clouds that may or not be Mortis. At the very least, it seems to be related to Mortis. Non-Force users who visit the place come away with Force powers. Perhaps Dennin is hedging his bets. He may be teasing the Mortis idea, yet leaving it for more in-depth exploration in Episode 7. Among the good guys, Dennin uses Ben and Tahiri sparingly and slightly teases a romance between the two. Has Jaina and Jag make cameos and only mentions Alana in passing. This works quite nicely if Alana is to be the main character in Episode 7, with the others being supporting players. Granted, Dennin had no input from Crucible filmmakers when he penned Crucible, but it's possible that some of his narrative decisions were made to set the stage for the next chapter in the book saga, and perhaps that vaguely planned next chapter is being incorporated into the sequel trilogy by J.J. Abrams and Lawrence Kasdan as we speak. One thing we do know, Christie Golden was supposed to give us a Sword of the Jedi, Jaina trilogy after Crucible, but it has been pulled from schedule. Currently, no post-Crucible books are scheduled. Denning gives a reader lots of reasons to keep turning the pages of Crucible, although punishment he doles out to our heroes is not one of those reasons. Han even loses an eye, for crying out loud. Intriguingly, He delves into sci-fi ideas that are rare but not inappropriate for Star Wars. For one thing, the artifact seems to wrap space-time. For another, the villains grow Terminator-style biots in vats, including some that are duplicates of real people, like in Jurassic Park. They need enzymes to stay alive, but Tahiri, channeling Jeff Goldblum, notes that life finds a way. Perhaps biots could be featured in Episode 7 as a cross between the clones and droids that fought it out in the prequel trilogy. Denon doesn't do as much as he could with the concept of relative time, but the very fact that he touches on it makes me intrigued for Episode 7. I know it's a long shot, but it may be ultimately not an idea worth pursuing, but the concept of warped space-time would provide an opening to include Ahsoka or some Rebels character in the sequel trilogy. Of course, would carbon freezing or other time travel related ideas peppered throughout the EU. And then it just says like they're not sure if the filmmakers will use Crucible as a jumping off point, because this article was published in 2013, but that's pretty much the article. And my thoughts on this article, I thought it was pretty interesting. Like, it is something to look back on. And then also when I did my review on Crucible, like I said, if the sequel trilogy did follow the expanded universe lore, like I did think they had a perfect place to go, because there's this big gap between Crucible and Legacy that was left unopened when Disney and Lucasfilm rebooted and discontinued the expanded universe, and then when they rebranded it as Legends. And definitely in the time frame, the original actors would have matched their age, actually, when you think about it. And definitely at the end of Crucible, because Luke does talk about going into retreat. And then as we see in the current, in the sequel trilogy we got with The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker, in The Force Awakens and Last Jedi, we see an exiled Luke Skywalker. And, as I said at the end of Crucible, it looks like, Luke was going off into retreat. And also in the, concept art, in the art of The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, it was a plan they had from the start to have an exiled Luke Skywalker. And it has been conferred one of the things from the George Lucas version of the sequel trilogy was an exiled Luke Skywalker. And so it is, in that, which pretty much, got carried over into The Force Awakens and Last Jedi, So it is maybe possible that Crucible even could have been a possible prequel to George Lucas's version of the sequel trilogy. And then, as they said, Christy Golden was kind of put on hold with Sword of the Jedi, because I guess, the story group wanted to see what the fate of the EU, and then maybe wanted to see if J.J. Abrams, if he was going to follow the expanding universe lore or not. So I guess that's maybe why they put Sword of the Jedi on hold, because to see what, the sequel trilogy would do. And definitely, I will link this article down below for you to check out. And then that's pretty much my thoughts on this article. And it's definitely, something to look back on to see maybe if what you thought, maybe like in an alternate reality, what could have been. And even though they didn't go that way, and it is what it is. And that's all I gotta say. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment what you think down below, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.